G'day everyone, how's it going? Welcome to Rukshan On X. I trust I'm coming through loud and clear. We've done enough testing. I think everything is working very well. So glad to see you all on here. I've already had a few of you pop up on the screen with your comments. So thank you for saying hello. Just want to also bring up here this super chat from, let's bring it up. From Thomas, mate. Thank you, mate, for supporting the show. And you say, evening, mate, keep up the great work. I'm really enjoying doing this. So thank you for the support, Thomas. I appreciate that. And like always, guys, you can join in this conversation with your comments, whether you're watching on X, Facebook, or YouTube. They will come through. And like always, I read most of the comments that I can, and I definitely read your super chats and get involved. So I just wanted to bring up this comment from Vaughan first, who is talking about what's tonight's topics of discussion. I've actually written it down tonight. So normally I do it off the cuff, but I had to prepare a little bit tonight because I had something else happening before this, just so I wasn't just walking into this. So we're going to be talking about Candace Owens being banned from Australia. I've had some posts on that on social media already, some of it which has triggered people. I don't know why, because I'm actually saying that it's not a good thing that she's been banned from Australia. And even though I'm making light of the fact that we've allowed ISIS brides in the country, I'm not claiming that Candace herself is an ISIS bride, even though I used that image. I was talking in jest. So I'll be talking about that. Of course, we've got some things happening with Israel and Gaza, with some of the executions that we've seen take place by Hamas of Gazans, Palestinians. We're going to be talking about Jacinta Allen today. Had a bit of a meltdown when a reporter asked her a question. I'm going to be bringing that up. We've got Charlie Kirk getting the Medal of Freedom and his birthday, and just some posts around that. And I've saved other few bits and pieces as well of things which have happened today. But as always, sometimes your comments also drive the conversation. So I'll be definitely keeping an eye out for the things that you guys are saying. And, it always takes me in different directions. So as you can see, your comments do show up on the screen. So try to be nice. There are some trolls that show up sometimes, and if they get too out of hand, I will try to mute them or get them off the screen if they're kind of being senseless in their trolling. It's one thing to criticize, but then it's another thing to annoy everyone just by writing the same thing over and over, and so on. So I'll be talking about a few different things, so bear with me. First off, I'll just read some of your comments, and we'll get into this news stories after that. So we got here Macnomics. Thanks, mate. Always great to have you on. Hello, fellow Rookwits. I like that term, Rookwits. Maybe we need to come up with a term for the people that decide to spend their time watching this show. So maybe we can be called Rookwits. I don't know. But you always use that term, mate. So good to have you on here. And I think I am going to stick with the 9 o'clock slot on Mondays and Wednesdays, just because there's a podcast that happens before this, the Oddcast with Topher Field and Carly. So they normally start around, I think, around 7:30, and they wrap up around 9:30. So I think starting at 9:30 is a bit too late, but I don't want to cut into their time during, those hours, because sometimes there's a bit of a lap of crossover with the people that watch these shows. So I don't mind doing it a bit later on in the night time, the night session, right? Like Rukshan After Dark, like Sky News After Dark, right? We're competing with, I think, Paul Murray, if you watch Sky News. So, right, I think it's okay time. I sometimes watch, in bed or just hanging out on the couch. I'll watch shows at 9 p.m. It's not a big deal, I think, anyway. Brittany, great to have you on the show again. Thanks for joining in. Jenny says this Sunday, Parliament House, 12 p.m. Is that the location for the March for Australia, Jenny? Is that what you are inferring? I haven't actually looked at the exact location spots, but I think that's what you're saying. Gap Media, mate, thanks for saying hello earlier and great to have you here. Mike sounding awesome. Yes, the Rode mic is doing really well. I'm very happy with the Rode mic. Crystal, thanks for watching the show. Great to have you here. And Alwyn says, no one does talkies better than Rook. I don't know. I went with this color talkies. I mean, I can change the color. Look, it's pretty advanced. I can change the color of the background and go like a blue or whatever. But I just thought, I don't know, talkies, like just try to make my color something a little bit different to everything else. So when you see the talkies color, you can associate it with Rukshan. And I've always kind of had a bit of talkies in my logos for real Rukshan very early on. And then, obviously I changed my name back to my real name, which is Rukshan Fernando. And I've kept the talkies in some of my logos. So that's why I've gone with that color. So yeah, no one does talkies better than me. Everything's blue. It's just what it is. Nathan says, I literally sent you a message today randomly about Candace Owens' scoop regarding her live tour. They haven't refunded tickets and giving people the runaround for months. I'll send you the emails. Okay, Nathan. Sorry, I haven't checked all my messages today. I've just been working, but I will check that. I did see a post about that by Joel Jamal. I might play that today because they did mention something about refunds at the end of that post as well. But yeah, like you're saying, you have some other emails. So I'll have a look at that as well, mate. Thank you. Some comments from Jenny, which I'll read later on. This can be a general comment. I think we can say this on every show. What? Thanks for joining the show on YouTube. Say no to digital ID. Definitely. I think, digital ID is something that we can all agree, despite, our differences in political views on certain topics, we can all agree that we should say no to digital ID. Monica, thanks for joining in on the show. Great to have you here. We've got another super chat here. From Rail, who says, it's not 7K, though hopefully it helps. Thanks for all your work. Mate, I only take 7K now, right? I only take 7K. 7K is the standard now. I've become used to 7K because everyone says, doesn't matter what I write anymore. People just put, hey, it's just another 7K. Or they'll post a picture of Bibi Netanyahu and be like, 7K Rukshan. They'll put a check from the Mossad and say 7K. It's just crazy. Like, it's just insane. And if I was getting 7K per post, I would be a very, very, very wealthy man. Because I post a lot. I post a lot on X. Like every single post I post, people are like 7K. But yeah, I think you're joking, mate. But I'll take the $10 towards the 7K pot. Hopefully by the end of this show. Thanks, mate. And Anthony, who's jumped in with a comment about Candace Owens, says, makes no sense. I don't agree with all she says, and some is crazy, but if we are for free speech, she should be allowed to visit. Besides, we can see her YouTube extremes online. Yeah, I'm definitely going to jump into all of that. I might get to your comments a little bit after this. But yeah, Candace Owens, guys, like I'm not, I actually was a super fan of Candace Owens. I've been following this political stuff for a long time. And in 2016, I think Candace Owens was a major part of waking up certain communities, especially the black community in America, or just being a black conservative woman speaking out against the kind of the racial politics that takes place in America. And in 2016, that was a major thing between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And Candace Owens kind of came into the fray during that time. And I think she did have an impact in terms of being someone that people looked at and said, hey, look at this, very intelligent black woman who is talking about conservative views and defending conservative views and defending the United States of America and pushing back against all this racial nonsense. Not that should be a surprise, because there's definitely, the way that racial politics works in America, they'll try to portray black women as not being on the conservative side of politics, usually. But she was something different, like a bit of a firebrand, and she came onto the scene and she was really effective during that time. And I remember seeing some of her congressional hearings where she's spoken and she's kind of, talking back and forth with congressmen or senators or whoever they were. And she was very good in presenting her arguments. And of course, she's gone on to become very successful as well, regardless of what you think of her views. I mean, she's got a massive following. Not many commentators that do politics has been able to build kind of the empire that she's been able to build. And now she's gone out on her own and she's become very successful at what she does, regardless of what you may think about what she does. So I'm someone that was a massive Candace fan. I would get other people to watch Candace Owens and I'd be like, check her out, listen to this person. So I come from that background. And even today, there are certain things which I agree with when it comes to what Candace Owens is saying. But I do disagree with her on a lot of things that she says today. But having said that, those disagreements don't extend to the extent of saying that she shouldn't be able to have those views, right? So when I disagree with the things that Candace Owens says, it's pretty much just like all politics where different people have different opinions on a certain topic. So let's say it relates to what's happening right now in Israel and Gaza. Candace has some very strong views. They seem to be aimed at a particular community, in this case, a Jewish community, and certain conspiratorial views sometimes, and some things she says without really any evidence, but she puts it out there because it's a free country in America in terms of when it comes to free speech, and you can say these things. I don't think she's ever called for violence. I don't think she's ever called for harm. I don't think she's ever called for the kind of crazy things that we see from left-wing extremists when it comes to disagreements. She's just always had a different view or put forward a different case or a different argument. And that's what should be expected of people that, partake in politics and, do the whole commentary thing and argue and debate. Like, you have people that have different views, and we've always kind of accepted that, right? We've always accepted that as being okay, especially in the Western Hemisphere. We've always had people that have had, well, some would say radical views, right? If it's on the right, even on the left, they have radical views. You don't normally say that when, it's on the left, like they're very protected. But even if it's radical views, we usually allow that debate to take place. And in this particular instance, Candace Owens has been banned from coming to Australia to do a talking tour. Now, this happened last year in 2024 when the Immigration Minister, Tony Burke, said that her presence in this country would upset certain communities. So the Black community, the Muslim community, the Jewish community, the LGBTQIA plus community, all these communities would be upset by her presence. So therefore, if she comes to Australia, she would cause discontent and, all types of drama. So on character grounds, right, based on the things that she's argued politically, her ideology, we can't let her into this country. So that happened last year. That was challenged. It went to the High Court, and the High Court has put out its ruling saying that they stand by the decision made by the minister. The minister effectively has, carte blanche decision-making power on this particular thing, and the High Court's just upheld it and hasn't found any grounds for Candace to find a way to come to Australia. Now, there are people celebrating this, and there are a lot of people who are detractors of Candace today, even on the right. And like I said at the start of this show, I'm someone that doesn't agree with her on everything that she's doing right now. But that's just my views. I'm not saying that she's wrong. I'm just saying I personally don't have those particular views. And I'm happy to put my views against what she's saying out there, which I do. And people, say that I get paid $7,000 per post for doing that, but I'm not. It's just a different view. So, I don't agree with the decision that's been made. I think it's fundamentally problematic for Australia that we're going down this path where politicians are getting involved in, trying to, like I was saying to someone else in the comments, it's kind of like becoming a nanny state. Like, they're deciding who we can hear opinions from, who we can't hear from opinions from in Australia, who can come, and they might cause a few people to get upset that don't agree with her. So even the people that do support her in this country, that do want to listen to Candace Owens, and there's a lot of fans that she has in Australia, well, they can't enjoy her anymore either, because the people that don't like her, they might get upset. So this is, getting into problematic territory, I think. And it's only going to get worse, I believe, as we go forward, especially in Australia, because we are becoming like this nanny state kind of country where the government tries to filter and control every aspect of information that we have access to. And this is not someone coming from, an enemy country of Australia, right? This is not someone that's coming from, Iran, some radical preacher that, they'd probably be allowed to come. That's how crazy all this is, right? This is not someone like that. This is someone that's coming from a relatively an ally of ours, the United States of America. She's an American citizen. She also lives in the UK, another one of our allies, and she has political views that a lot of people here on the right, conservatives in Australia, have as well. So it's not like her views are radical to the extent of being illegal or being something that causes violence. It's just views which are, controversial. We can probably use that language, and some of you might not agree with that. We can probably say it's controversial, but it's not to the extent of, illegal or like terroristic or calling for, jihad or calling for the destruction of a country or calling for violence. No, it's just she has certain views on certain topics that seems to upset some groups of people, but that shouldn't matter because Australia has a mix of people that have all types of views. So definitely, I disagree with the decision that's been made. I think it's it's not looking good, and I've experienced this before. Like when I went to New Zealand with Avi Yemeni, just after all the COVID nonsense, Jacinta, what's her name, Jacinta Ardern and her government effectively shut out Avi from coming to New Zealand, and that had to go through a whole process, and that was just purely based on ideological views around COVID and vaccines. Same thing happened to me when I went to the airport. Like there was this whole drama of trying to get into New Zealand where, when my passport was first put through, it was all denied, right? It was all denied. And it's just like, I don't believe that we should live in societies like this. So regardless of whether I agree with someone or not on their particular views, if they're not doing anything illegal, if they're not actually asking for the harm to our societies, then the government should play no role in stopping people from listening to their views in this country. Like, this is meant to be a liberal Western democracy, and we're built on the foundations of people having debates and arguments on different political ideas. And that is actually what makes us different and great when we compare ourselves to countries like, communist nations, or like, let's say we complain about China or Russia. This is what makes Australia and the West different, that we allow for these type of arguments and debates to take place. So on those grounds, I do not agree with the decision that's been made. I'll probably read an article from the ABC just to give a bit more context around all the stuff that I've been talking about, and then I'll get to some of your comments on this as well. I did make the point that I'll get to the points that I made about what she could do to maybe get into the country, because we have seen a double standard in Australia, right? We have seen the issue of the ISIS brides that are being brought into the country, right? We have the issue of our immigration minister, Tony Burke, going to the airport to welcome refugees, right, from Gaza for whatever, God knows what reason. It's kind of like showing favoritism, like, is there a conflict of interest sometimes with ideological views? Like, I think there is, if they're picking and choosing like this. And how can we forget what they did to Novak Djokovic when he came to Australia, just because he had certain views on vaccines that he did not want to, as an elite athlete, he chose to look after his body, treat it like a temple, and not inject himself with that juice, because he came to Australia and he had those types of views. What did the Liberal government, I believe at that time, what did they decide? Oh, he's going to be danger. He's going to be a danger to the Australian public. And that was, of course, around the time when the government was trying to force us all to take these vaccines, these mandates, and pushing the public and deceiving the public. And here we have this guy, this number one tennis player in the world, saying, no, I don't do that stuff. I don't need those things. I'm coming. I don't believe in those things. And he's not telling anyone else not to do it. He's just saying that's my particular view. Well, they're like, oh, well, you can't come into the country. It's that same exact thing that's happening at the moment right now, I think, with Candice. It's on a different level because it's about political and ideological views. But I don't think she's, again, just want to repeat, I don't think she's said or done anything to the point where it's illegal or she's inciting violence. I think it's far from that. And anyone celebrating this just because they don't like her, I think it's probably in bad taste. Of course, the far left is, loving this, and they're celebrating this, saying that, she's like a violent and all these kind of things. But there's a bit of crossover as well. Let's bring up the article I saw from the ABC, because, I like to pick a left-wing news organization for these ones, because they kind of give all the talking points to the left when they write these articles. So let me read this one. High Court upholds minister's decision to block visa for American commentator Candace Owens. Conservative commentator Candace Owens has lost her High Court challenge to a decision to deny her a visa for a speaking tour last year. The visa was refused by Immigration Minister Tony Burke under the character test on the grounds that Owens could incite discord in a section of the community, and her visit was not in the national interest. Really? Really? Like, this is, I think someone mentioned this earlier in the super chat, Anthony. Australians have access, Tony Burke and government officials and High Court. Australians have access to the internet right now, at least. They haven't denied us that yet, but they might try in the future. But we have access to Candace Owens' podcast. Like, she has a lot of subscribers in Australia. Like, that's how they know about her to begin with. So what exactly are you stopping Australians from hearing by her? Like, her podcasts, her views, they're freely available online, as far as I know. They're not blocked by the Australian government. So people in Australia still consume her views. Like, so what are they worried about, that if she turns up and her fans come and listen to her, like, somehow they're going to, like, something else is going to happen? Like, what's going to happen? If anything, what we're going to have is maybe people that don't like her, even then, like, the small fraction of that group, well, should they get to decide what the rest of Australia gets to listen to? No, of course not. So that's why this is all ridiculous. Let's keep reading the article. Her lawyers argued the decision placed an Impressible burden on the implied right to freedom of political communication. Her lawyers told the High Court not only was she denied the implied right, but it was also denied to the Australians who would have attended her events. I agree. They also argued the event, if even if it found the law was valid, the High Court should find the minister had misconstrued. I gotta make this bigger. Can I? Here we go. Has misconstrued it in making the decision about Owens. Today, the court unanimously found the law was valid and applied in circumstances where the person in question would stir up or encourage dissension or strife, risking harm to the Australian community. Really? Do you really think Candace Owens, right? She's probably like 5 foot something. She's got strong views and she's opinionated, but do you really think that she would cause harm to the Australian community by speaking in this country? We have some radical, crazy crap being said. What, just the other day? Who? Lydia Thorpe. She said she's going to burn down the Parliament House. This is one of our senators. We have wacky senators and politicians saying radical things all the time. And they're worried about someone that's had a political view that might, be controversial. Really? Come on. It's BS. Minister's reasons for the decision. Owens has more than 5 million subscribers on YouTube, where she publishes interviews and political commentary. In making the decision in October last year, Mr. Burke said Australia's national interest is best served when Candace Owens is somewhere else. From downplaying the impact of the Holocaust with comments about Nazi physician Joseph Mengele, through to claims that Muslims started slavery, Candace Owens has the capacity to incite discord in almost every direction. Now, those are, yes, there might be distasteful to certain individuals in the community, but they're discussions which are had at numerous levels within society, whether it's academically, whether it's on the basis of a political discussion between different political ideological groups during an election time, whether it's during a war. Now, during this particular war, we've had very strong views and discussions on political commentary shows. I don't know if you guys watch Piers Morgan. Very intense debates between different people on that show, right? And a lot of people will be offended by the things that people on that show are saying, depending on who they support in that particular conflict. But, should we ban those people from coming to Australia? I tend to say no. We can't do that. If it's bad views that they have, then we can challenge those views, right? We can have people that have alternate views or a challenging debate that can challenge those views, speak up about that as well. I think that's the way to move forward as a society, not just by denying that people actually in Australia listen to Candace Owens, and sometimes people agree with the things that she's saying. I think that's more dangerous if you kind of create this this vacuum where we can't have these discussions within us in our society because somehow the government's decided, not this one. Because then what is the limit? When does Tony Burke stop, right? Who is he to decide, besides being the immigration minister, who is he to decide what are the limits of a topic? In July 2024, she described stories about Nazi experiments on twins in concentration camps during World War II as completely absurd and bizarre propaganda. Mr. Burke also took into consideration Owens' influence on the perpetrator of the Christchurch mosque terrorist attacks, who described the plaintiff as the person who had influenced him above all. Now, again, I think that's BS. That's kind of slander on Candace Owens. Just because that whack job that shot up the mosque may have followed her or, written something about her in a manifesto that she had nothing to do with. Like, how can you blame her and attribute that to her? I mean, they've been doing that to her for a long time. I think that's complete nonsense. Owens' tour had been scheduled for November 2024 and included stops in Sydney, Perth, Melbourne, Adelaide, and Brisbane. Owens said Australia's audiences would hear her discuss everything they do not want us speaking about, including freedom of speech and why Christ really is king. In wake of Mr. Burke's decision, pro-Jewish group Anti-Defamation Commissioner described it as a victory for truth. Again, I think that's also wrong for these groups to be talking about victory for truth to stopping from debate taking place, right? Again, I don't believe that's reflective of every single individual in the community. Some of these groups that take these missions on, they do not represent the views of everyone. They have very particular interests, and sometimes those interests override everything else. But the job is of the High Court and the government to determine that. And for whatever reason, the court in this instance has determined that Candace Owens is a threat to Australia. High Court unanimously finds law is valid. Today, the High Court said its judgment, the implied freedom of political communication, did restrict the government's power to prevent communication on political matters unless the restriction is imposed to fulfill a constitutionally legitimate purpose. The implied freedom of political communication is not a personal right, the High Court said. Some of this stuff could have implications for the rest of us as well. The court found the law relied upon to reject the visa was valid. The court said it did not impinge on the implied right to freedom of political communication, and if there was a burden on the implied right, it was justified. The court also found that Mr. Burke did not misconstrue the law. So pretty much the court saying everything's happening as per normal. Minister made a decision. There's nothing wrong with the way he made the decision. It's completely fine. End of story. So that's where we are in Australia, where, yes, Candace Owens is controversial, like I said at the start of this show, but, many Australians want to listen to her views, and I think they should be allowed to. We're not really a free country if we can't. And I know the cynics in here will be like, well, we're not a free country anyway. And there's a bit of truth to that with everything that's happening with the social media bill and the censorship and all the things that they're doing. But, we still aspire to have those kind of aspirational goals that we've had for a long time. And I would have hoped to have Candace Owens here in Australia, talking about whatever she wants to talk about, and Australians that want to listen to her, listening to her. And then that becoming a part of the discourse that we have in this country. If she was going to be that prominent of a deal when she comes here, I actually think they've made her a bigger deal now because they've done all this, and more people are probably going to go. It's like the Streisand effect. More people are going to go find out about Candace Owens, kind of like what the whole Charlie Kirk situation. But if she had come here and she said some controversial things, then it would have given an opportunity for those of us that disagree with her to put our voices into the mix as well and say why we disagree with her, right? I'm just using myself as an example. Anyone, whoever it is, like that is how you move forward in these discussions, not by pretending that there's not people in this country that have these views, because I'm telling you, there's a lot of people in Australia that share Candace Owens' views. I see it online. She has a lot of support amongst Australians online. A lot of people say that she's a beacon of truth, and that what she's doing with her investigations, she's better than the FBI, and so on. People have all types of views about Candace Owens, and they should have every right in this country to enjoy those views, because I'll tell you what, they will bring in certain individuals into this country, right? These kind of sometimes these preachers and stuff, these radical preachers that talk about jihad, that talk about hateful things against the West. No problem, right? And there is this double standard, and I hate seeing that, and I hate seeing the fact that regardless of my opinions on Candace Owens, she's still someone from the right. She's a conservative. It is very much targeted towards conservatives. These type of bans, right? The Novak Djokovic, his views are more aligned to the right at that time on vaccines, for instance. Very much targeted towards that. If you had some left-wing radical that rocked up to this country that was talking about, Australia shouldn't exist, it's a colonial, project that we should dismantle, death to the colony, down with the colony, they would get a visa. They would be allowed to come and, go to university lectures. They bring in these socialists all the time from different countries. These communists get to come here all the time and lecture at the universities in Australia and poison the minds of the university students with their nonsense from their failed nations. They do it all the time. I've seen it. They have that Marxist thing that they have at Melbourne Uni or Monash Uni every year. They bring in people. They bring in socialists. They brought some dude called Stalin down from Sri Lanka, right? This kind of socialist communist. Like, why? Like, why do they get to hear from the communists only? Why can't we hear from Candace Owens? So it's not about your views, right? I'm going to get to your comments now, and I'll come back to the ISIS brides after that. Well, there's a lot of comments. I'll just quickly get to the super chats first. So Equity says, is it true Avi supports her ban? Have you guys seen something where he says, let me look up X, all right? Let me look up Avi. I'll see what he said. I don't believe so. But let's have a look. No, No. Avi's just been sharing stuff about Avi. Look at all the posts, it's just Avi. People talking about Avi and sharing his thing. I know he shared my particular post about Candace Owens in a burqa. That was, again, in jest. It was not about diminishing Candace Owens. It was just making light of the fact that, our country is ridiculous that we're bringing in these ISIS brides, for instance. But no, the discussions I've had with Avi is that he doesn't agree with Candace Owens' views. But someone like Avi, who's also been the subject of, countless, attempts to ban him or stop him from going to countries and things like this, he understands that the importance of, the whole free speech thing. I don't believe that Candace has, gone to that territory where she's like an extremist, trying to cause disharmony, whether it's in US, in England, and or Australia. I think, she's upsetting people with her views, but like I'm upset by far left views because I think they're ridiculous. But I wouldn't want to see them banned. They shouldn't be. They're just stupid views. All right, let's see if I can get through some of these comments. I might talk about the my other post while I do that, so we're not just sitting here staring at me. Let's have a look. All right, so look, this was a AI image that I generated. All right, just for fun, and I was just speaking in jest. Right, I was speaking in fun. I actually wrote it's sarcasm just because, with how the internet is these days, people end up believing some of these things. And I don't want to come back to me saying that, Rukshan, you're kind of sharing fake news. This is a joke from the start. I said, breaking: the Australian government has flown Candace Owens in secret to Australia after she declared herself to be an ISIS bride. The Minister for Immigration said now that Candace has shown the right type of character grounds to be welcomed into Australia as a treasonous supporter of a terrorist enemy, the High Court ruling denying a visa was no longer an issue. And I wrote, it's sarcasm, but also there's an element of truth to it. Now, I know the circumstances are slightly different because some of these ISIS traitor brides that should be stepping nowhere into Australia should have been denied any access to this country after their treasonous acts. There is that element of, well, what does their citizenship status mean? And so on. And this is slightly different. But the idea is, what I'm trying to convey is the fact that, the government doesn't see the dangers in welcoming in people who were radicalized overseas or who were radicalized already before going overseas to take part in massive terrorist organizations, disgusting, vile, savage acts in the Middle East. And a lot of these ISIS brides were involved in those certain acts. So it's not dangerous for the community to have to live with these particular individuals, right? In the government's wisdom, right? Because they're all doing this in secret, really. They're trying to hide this from the Australian public for a long time. So they know it's wrong as well. But, they're struggling to, make the case because it's so wrong. But yeah, like if she was one of those, that kind of that character, right? If we're talking about extremist ideologies and extremist views, these ISIS brides definitely had or have, probably still do, probably worse, even though they're hiding it now. They had that, right? Just because they lost the little battle that they did overseas and their, partners and stuff got their asses handed to them by Donald Trump when he came into power in 2016, and he ended that in a couple of weeks, doesn't mean that they've changed ideologically, right? They're still dangerous individuals as far as I'm concerned. And, if Candace had those views, for instance, of an ISIS bride, would she have been allowed into Australia? Now, again, I speak in jest, but sometimes it does feel like that, right? Sometimes it does definitely feel like we live in this Hippocratic, country where certain individuals get the red carpet rolled out for them, and they usually end up being extremists. All right, let's have a look at your comments, guys. Oh, okay. There's an interesting comment about the Canadian ostriches. Yeah, I've been following the ostrich farm story. Rebel News has been covering that a lot. I might bring that up in a future episode, or maybe even play some of the Rebel videos from that ostrich farm. So I think it's the ostrich farm with a few hundred ostriches where the governments or the authorities, wildlife authorities, I don't know, whatever it is, have taken over and they're trying to euthanize the ostriches or something like this. I'm not fully across it. This might be for later. Did you hear just need to say that Melbourne is safe? I mean, yeah. If you want to talk about like dangers to the Australian community, right? And I'm just kind of digressing here a little bit. How many gangbangers do we have now running around Melbourne with machetes that have been bought in from these countries, that continue to be bought in from these countries, knowing that the high majority of them, especially the younger ones, are participating in these kind of gang style groups, terrorizing the Victorian public. Well, apparently that's all good for the immigration minister. Like, bring in more of that. Like, that's kind of where we're at. Like, Candace Owens is the most dangerous person. That's a good question, mate. We don't know where Harold Holt is yet. And this is Liberty on Candace Owens. She was based at one point. Look, I would say she's based still in a different way, like in her own little world. She has lost a lot of her, I guess, legitimacy in the world of political commentary, but she has gained a massive following of just ordinary people that don't care about that. Now, say whatever you will. At the end of the day, a lot of this is a numbers game as well. And, she does have mind share. She's a part of the conversation. People bring her up for different topics. Like, she inserts herself into all sorts of things. And sometimes it's random things like about, whether Bridget Macron is a man or a woman. Like, yeah, okay, cool, Candace. That's like I get it. Like, it'd be interesting to know, but it doesn't really affect our lives. But, she really puts her heart and soul into it. And some people love it. David wants to know when I'm getting deported. So there you go, David. I'm not getting deported. Jack says free Palestine. We got here Martina saying you have no time to read comments on her live stream. It's so rapid. Yeah, I've watched. There's a lot of people watching her live stream. Philip, thanks for joining in, mate. Appreciate it. And Jack says, Candace Owens said that the reports of Mengel's experiments in Auschwitz were bizarre propaganda. Were bizarre propaganda. She's a Holocaust denier. And she might be. I know she argues against kind of certain things, but, she might be. All right, she might be. But that in itself should not disqualify someone, because there's a lot of people in this country already that have certain views like that. And again, when it comes to ideological views, political views, it changes with time. Sometimes it's hard to kind of just put people into those boxes when it comes to these type of debates that's going on. And sometimes the hyperbolic ways that commentators speak when they're trying to make comparisons between the scenes that they're seeing in Gaza and what's happening in what's happened in the past, for instance, like they're always making these type of comparisons. And I think we have to look at that overall thing. But I do agree that she has, I guess, crossed the line in terms of what's palatable to certain institutions or certain government institutions or certain, left-wing, right-wing institutions as well. Across the political aisle, she has stepped on some toes, which make it a little bit harder for her. Definitely that's happened. Chuck Stone says, only an idiot would celebrate a person being denied entry because the government disagrees with them. Yeah, I mean, I always think I try not to, obviously I have a political philosophy and an ideological viewpoint, and it's very clear that I'm, more conservative, right-leaning. And yeah, I make a lot of, I say a lot of things about the far left. I say a lot of things about Antifa, these kind of organizations that I don't like, that I think they're, really bad for us. But, if there were certain things happening to them which were unfair or unjust, I would speak up against it, because I feel like the shoes can be flipped around at any point. And, if people haven't broken laws, or they haven't committed, crimes, or it's some sort of weird process crime, right? You got to speak up against those things, because it can be turned against you. And that's why it's important, especially for conservatives in the right, in these moments, to speak out, because it will eventually be turned on you. Economics says, crazy. If you don't like what Candace Owens says, don't listen to her. She's never incited violence. And I will say that she hasn't incited violence. She's spoken out against left-wing violence a lot, especially BLM. I should probably change this image that I've got here of Candace. I'm saying she's never incited violence, and I got her in a holding two guns. I just put this one of her here. There you go. I think that's better. Yeah, she hasn't incited violence. And she's spoken out against violence, right? Jenny says, Candace, no. ISIS brides, yes. Effing hypocrites. Rejected Little ID, good to see you again. Thanks for joining on the show. Yeah, and I agree with this, Martina. Like, how dare the government babysit us? I agree. Like, I don't like the babysitting aspect of it. I rather, again, like I said, argue with people I disagree with than having the government decide for me. A says that Candace is a Catholic Mason. And I have seen a lot of people say that she was denied entry because she's like a Catholic or something like this, or the Jewish lobby is so powerful that because she's so anti-Zionist at the moment, they have their hands in the High Court and in the Australian, in the government, and they're the ones that have pushed this and denied her. And yes, we did see some Jewish lobbies involved in initially putting a case against her, but when you consider the decisions the government's made, there's been, I think, a few Israeli ministers denied entry to Australia, visa denied. And these are government ministers within the government of Israel who have been denied entry into Australia. So I think, you can't really make that, add up, right? It doesn't really add up because it's been across the board. And what's happening really is the Australian government is making certain decisions, and some of the decisions they're making are like, not all there, and they're deceptive decisions. They're not truthful decisions. And whichever side of the political aisle you're on, and what they're worried about is that if the public starts speaking up about those decisions or having debates about those decisions, the government themselves will get found out as being, duplicitous and tricking all of us. So instead of doing that, they'll just ban people from coming to the country that might raise these as debates, right, as social debates in our country. We don't want that to happen. Let's just ignore that and just make sure that doesn't happen. So across the board, they've banned a lot of people from coming to Australia, from a lot of different countries, including Israel. Good evening, Lucy. Thanks for joining in on the show. Yeah, Jimmy Dore is coming, and someone was telling me that Roseanne, is it Rosie O'Donnell? Rosie O'Donnell. Someone told me that Rosie O'Donnell is in Australia right now on one of my comments. And she's a Fruit Loop. Like, she says the most deranged things against Donald Trump or against political people that she doesn't like. This nutbag, I think she's in Australia. I'm sorry if anyone likes her, but is she in Australia? Yeah, she is here. And like, how does she get a visa? Because she's I don't like her political views. I think she's deranged, right? I think she says offensive things. I think she's hateful. Her views are hateful, and she's a sick woman. But somehow she's managed to find her way to Australia. So how? Who approved her visa, right? Why didn't we get a decision on this from the government to protect us from Rosie O'Donnell, right? This is the questions we got to ask. Like, how is this happening, right? Anyway, that's enough of Rosie on the screen. Let's keep going through your comments. Invite Candace on the Opposition podcast. Look, there was a time we were talking to, or during the tour time, because when someone comes for a tour, they usually try to get some coverage in the country as well. And there was a possibility that I could have spoken to her or had her on or something like this. When those things were happening, when she's coming to Australia, but that never happened. But I think she's very big. We're small time here in Australia, especially our podcasts. Even though I think we do pretty good. We do pretty good for Australians. I don't know. I don't think these days Candace would go on shows like this. If you've seen what Candace said about Aborigines, you would understand why she got noticed. I mean, look, she has certain views, and I don't think it comes from a place of hatred as well. She has certain views about the black Americans as well that would be offensive, but I think it's just like, honestly speaking, about things that we can observe in reality, right? She was very good on the BLM thing, calling out George Floyd, calling out all that nonsense, right? This guy that murdered, not did a murder, sorry, that George Floyd that died, he stabbed a woman, or whatever, or shot a woman with a gun who was pregnant, right? This is not a saint. This is not someone you build statues for. And she was very good at, eloquently putting those arguments out there as a Black American. And, it is what it is, right? It's offensive to some people, but so what? Economics says she should apply for a student visa. She can study gender studies at Melbourne Uni. Guys, so many comments. I'm going to keep moving on with the topics because I don't think I'll be able to get through all these comments. I'll just see if there's any other super chats as well. But thank you all for taking part in the commentary. I'm sure people can read it as it's playing on here. And Equity says, that's good news. Someone said that in the chat, that Arvy's happy that Candace got cancelled. No, I know Arvy doesn't respect her views and he vehemently disagrees with the things that she's saying, but I don't believe he'll be happy that she was banned. Oh, this is a controversial topic. Rukshan, should the ABC say sorry for and explain the pederasty? How do you say that? Pederasty late line broadcast from Richard Neville in 1975. Yeah, like I can't even play this video on YouTube, guys. Like I think the video is available on X. If you look up those words, and the ABC, you can find the video or the audio recording. They've put some sort of injunction on YouTube to take this video off. And it's this sick video from the ABC in the 70s where they got pedophiles talking about why they like kids and, kind of almost promoting that lifestyle. It was like, it's really sick and twisted. And someone was bringing it up last show and telling me about it. And I didn't bring it up because I couldn't play the YouTube video because it was, it is in this territory where somehow ABC's managed to get it wiped off YouTube. But you can find it, I believe, on X and Rumble. And yes, we should hear about it. I think John Ruddick did the videos on BitChute as well. Thanks, mate. Thanks for saying that. I'll actually try to find John Ruddick speaking about this in the Parliament in New South Wales because I think, again, this is what I mean. This show, we can go on a different track. This pedo video that the ABC played, I definitely think we should have answers from them because, it's sick and twisted. Like, again, this is in the 70s. I don't know what it was like. I wasn't born in the 70s. I don't know what the the particular climate of news and things were in the 70s, right? We're just probably coming out of the 60s and all the hippie and the free love stuff, but sick, twisted individuals talking about their love of children in a sexualized, pedophilic way. And then it being broadcast by the national broadcaster, and it's never really been addressed. They've just tried to suppress it. I definitely think there's something more there that I don't know if they'll answer this stuff, but let me try to find John Ruddick speaking about this. I did see something like this. Here we go. I found the video.
That this House expresses its deepest concern over the Australian Broadcasting Corporation's decision on the 14th of July 1975 to allow former Late Line host Mr Richard Neville to broadcast an interview with three self-described pederasts about their graphically worded sexual abuse of young children, some as young as 3. 2, that this House recognises that the Honourable Reverend Fred Nile, before his time as a member of this Parliament, was the director of the Festival of Light. And A, that the day after the interview, on the 15th of July 1975, the Reverend Nile provided a recording of the interview and his concerns to the then New South Wales Police Commissioner Fred Hanson. B, that Commissioner Hanson said the police would, quote, study the situation to see if the Vice Squad should be involved. 3, that this House notes that it's concerned that the ABC denied the existence of this interview when questioned by Senator Erica Betts during a question on notice of the Senate Standing Committee on Environment and Communication. 4, that this House commends Mr John Adams for acquiring a copy of the interview in 2023 from the ABC and then publishing it on the 13th of October 2025. 5, that this House further notes that its alarm over the ABC for threatening legal action against Mr Adams as a result of publishing this material. And 6, that this House supports transparency in government, including the ABC, and calls on the Minns government to release all details surrounding the investigation from 1975.
Yeah, so there's that. You guys can go look into that. Just go to X and BitChute and Rumble. They're the platforms if you want to see what's going on there. Because yeah, the usual platforms you can't really talk about it because it's ABC takes action. They're even threatening legal action against the individual that released the video on YouTube. So yeah, maybe more of that will come up. All right, guys, let's go to the next story. I'll bring it up here. I agree, DMAC. The fact that ABC has pushed so hard to close this down is all that needs to be said. All right. The next story, guys, I'm just going to be talking about these. Ooh. What happened? These Hamas executions that we're seeing. There's a lot of footage coming out. Again, I can't play this footage on this particular platform. You can watch if you want to. It's sick, depraved, savage stuff, obviously. But if you wanted to see the evidence of all of this, it's available on X and some of the other platforms. But yeah, there's a lot of videos coming out right now of Hamas, squads of Hamas in different uniforms, of course, going around the parts of Gaza, rounding up people that they're claiming are Israeli collaborators, which are just other Gazans or other Palestinians, however you want to name them. And yeah, publicly, without any due process, executing them. And, people obviously make certain excuses for this type of behavior. But let's just read this article from the Toronto Sun, because I think there is a lot of voices missing that were previously talking about human rights and due process. And, they're missing now. As soon as the savage Hamas group starts executing their own in this sick, depraved manner, without due process, mind you, a complete denial of human rights, regardless of whatever these individuals have done. Definitely, if it was a wartime, it would be classed as a war crime. And yeah, it's all good because, they're Israeli collaborators, which is just convenient for Hamas when you have this type of vacuum, which is happening right now in Gaza with, the ceasefire and phase one and things that kind of changed the structure of what was going on there. They just carte blanche, this right to go around just taking out all their enemies. And sometimes this is a political opposition, whether you like it or not. Even these gangs are the opposition to the views of maybe Hamas. And this whole idea that, people have that Hamas is just like the only organization in that piece of land that has any backing of the people is ridiculous. It's like saying in Australia that everyone just supports Labor because they're in government or they're in power. It doesn't work that way. There's always going to be people with different views. And yeah, now they're just going around. Someone said they're rebranding and they're just taking people out and publicly executing them in public squares to the cheers and the recordings of what appears to be very well-fed Gazans that were not too long ago complaining about genocide and starvation and the inhumanity of everything, are now cheering on the streets and watching their fellow Palestinians and Gazans get executed, right, without any trials. And these are the same people at the same time who are complaining about Israelis sending back prisoners, saying, they were just in Israeli prisons without due process. Well, at least they're coming back alive in most of these instances that we've seen, not these kind of public executions. That is the lack of due process. That is the ultimate savagery. But for some reason, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just sick. But let's have a read of this article. Apparently, there are some Hamas war crimes that the federal government and Canada's anti-Israel protesters are willing to ignore. And this can apply to Australia as well. While the federal government has been critical about Israel's approach to Gaza, they have offered nothing but cricket on the orchestrated and repugnant public culling of Palestinians by Hamas. On the day of the ceasefire took effect, there have also been no protests by angry, masked Antifa bullies blocking the streets either. It seems there are some things these Palestinian supporters are prepared to tolerate, but the Liberal government's silence in this story, and it shows its double standards on Israel. These disgraceful mass public executions carried out by Hamas terrorists likely as retribution on rivals, have conjured memories of the Holocaust. While there are leaders trying to spin it, there is nothing okay with killing people like this in front of cheering crowds. And we're talking about, there's an image here. We can probably have this image displayed. I can't play the video. But yeah, young men, sure, they might be opposing Hamas and whatever, right? But they've been captured. There's no due process whatsoever. And it's one thing to kill them in combat when you're fighting this group, right? And even that can be questionable, because it's been very questionable when the IDF have done it, for instance. People have raised all sorts of concerns about deaths during combat. But this is individuals who have been rounded up from towns, brought to a central point together, lined up in front of members of the public who are filming them and cheering it on, and then being shot by these machine guns very brutally and savagely. And we're meant to believe that these are the peaceful individuals, that these are, we're all Palestinians, and we're not. This is far from who we are. These are sick, savage individuals who are doing these things, and it should be called out. And these are the regional partners of the Australian government. Anthony Albanese, Penny Wong, this is who they have sided with. There's no walking away from that. So this is happening. It's happening on, I would say, a mass scale in terms of the cleaning out that Hamas is doing right now. They're, of course, refusing to disarm as well, which is against the 20-point plan that the other Arab nations, the Middle East nations so far, when they agreed, trying to put all this together, that one of the conditions was that Hamas was going to disarm. The condition that Australia would recognize the state of Palestine was on the promise that the Palestinian Authority would be disarming Hamas. Now, it doesn't look like that's going to happen, because now they're just going around killing everyone. There's a massive vacuum of people that oppose them now, because they're all just being executed in public. And yeah, we're pretty much partners to that in Australia through our own government, because we've partnered with Hamas and these people and haven't called it out. And this is what we're seeing now. I'm just skimming through this article, but I would say the silence is deafening, because when you bring this up now, when you bring this up online, people will be just like, oh well, they're just they're Israeli collaborators, they're ISIS, they're funded by Americans, and all these all these excuses. And it's like, come on, guys, that doesn't mean, even if all of that is true, what happened to the benevolent resistance fighters, the humans, the Palestinians that we all were? They said they're all like us. They're all just good people. They're resistance fighters. What happened to all that nonsense? That all those lies, right? All those lies, because now they're just savagely executing people, and they're showing the world what the difference is. And this is the difference. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. Donald Trump has spoken about this. I see some of you guys talking about Trump. I'll just bring up Trump's remarks in relation to this. Let's have a look.
Told them we have told them we want to disarm, and they will disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. But they will disarm. Do you understand me?
Yes. You say
because
quickly.
everyone says, oh, well, they won't disarm. They will disarm. And I spoke to Hamas, and I said, you're going to disarm, right? Yes, sir, we're going to disarm. That's what they told me. They will disarm, or we will disarm them. Got it? Okay.
What is the deadline you're going to put on that? You say quickly, sir. Sir, you said quickly, but what is the deadline you're going to put on that before you take action?
A reasonable period of time. Pretty quickly. A reasonable period of time.
Congratulations.
So, I mean, look, the plan is to get these Middle East regional partners to convince Hamas to disarm and change their ways. It doesn't look like they want to disarm. And like DMAC has said, they've rebranded and they've got different colored vehicles and slightly different uniforms, but they're still, it's literally just Hamas. But their spokespeople have said they're not disarming. The struggle's not over. This is just the beginning. That's what they're saying. The prisoners that have come back, they're saying that they want to fight and die again. So this is pretty much a death cult you're dealing with. And, Trump, for all his words, I I don't know what that means. Like, we will disarm them. I don't know if he's just expecting regional partners to do it. But we could see another flaring up of tensions there if Hamas do not disarm and continue on in this manner. We could see more intervention, and it could be even more brutal, that intervention that takes place to finish them off if they don't want to go down, this kind of option where they've been allowed, ways out of this. They're running around saying that they won the war, all these victory parades. It's just complete lies and nonsense. Like, no one should believe that crap. It's just propaganda. They don't care about the cost that it takes on their people. This is a death cult, and everyone's being, radicalized, right? There's people cheering on the streets, watching these slaughterings, and this is the society that's being built again after all of this, apparently after the Holocaust that they're saying that they survived. All these massive terms that are being used, and I'm not trying to downplay the scenes that we've seen, and obviously there's been a lot of innocent lives lost in this war, but they want a continuation of it because it's not about it ending. It needs to continue. They need to find some way for it to continue. They want to get, they want to get back at Israel, whatever they want to do. All unrealistic, all a waste of lives and time. But it might take someone like Trump again to step up and finish them off for good. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. Let's hope the Middle East partners there, the Arabs, the Turks, who have committed to this peace plan, end up disarming them. Because you have to understand that a lot of the reason that they exist is through funding through these countries. So it's really up to them. Charcoal says, after murdering 680,000, you have the gall to say they are barbaric by taking out traders who contributed to these figures. Are you serious? That figure is very much disputed, even by the numbers from the Hamas Ministry of Health. You can throw out those figures there. You're looking at around 68,000 people, a massive amount of them to be combatants. If you're looking at the footage that's coming out there, it doesn't look like there was anything close to a genocide that took place from the footage that we're seeing. It doesn't look like there was starvation. It doesn't look like there was malnutrition to the extent that we're seeing. It doesn't match up. It just doesn't match up. Like, you can lie about it if you want to, but the reality is the footage doesn't lie. It doesn't match up. Yes, there's been a lot of destruction. Yes, a lot of innocent lives have been lost. Yes, it looks like a lot of people were used as human shields, but it doesn't match up. And that number is incorrect. And we can see a lot of this, because even if you watch the propaganda that's coming out now out of that particular place. So this is from Eye on Palestine, and there's a lot of videos. I've just chosen a few. A student in Gaza celebrates her achievement in high school exams after 2 years of war, displacement, and the absence of basic living conditions. It's noted that more than 226,000 students from Gaza took the high school exams this year. High school exams don't happen, I'm sorry, during starvation, malnutrition, and a genocide. Like, it doesn't happen. It's just, if you're going to fall for this propaganda and see these scenes a day or two after a ceasefire, it's just not realistic. You're just living in a different alternate world where you've been propagandized to so much that you just believe it all. And I'm not saying this is a good thing. These children should be studying. They should be doing this. They should be looking for a prosperous future for themselves. But it's not the lies that we've been told.
أنا مش مصدق حلم الليالي الغالي خلاص اتحقق أنا مش مصدق.
Anyway, many such scenes. Again, I think it's great. I think it's great that the people of in Gaza, there's no bombs falling on them, that there's not that particular threat hanging over them. Right now, the only threat that's hanging over them is the murderous, barbaric, savage Hamas, who are dealing out punishments to people that they see as opposition to them for whatever reason. They want to be the only big dog in town and make it so that no matter what anyone does, they can't be disarmed. They will be the only option that people there have. Yeah, so in a genocide without power and water, they had the internet. How? Yeah, I mean, look, again, I'm not trying to downplay what's happened there. There's a lot of innocent people have died, and we've seen multiple wars and innocent people are dying. Ukraine, Russia comes to mind. Lots and lots of deaths there. Many such wars in Africa. Lots of people dying, but it hasn't risen to that. What people are saying, so it's just not there. Like, it just doesn't match up. You know, it just doesn't match up. I'm sorry. I'm not going to lie about it and pretend that this is what's happened. I'm not downplaying that people have died. It's just not. It just doesn't match up with what we're seeing afterwards. This is from a Palestinian that's written this. I'll just read this out. As a Palestinian who openly opposes Hamas and rejects the glorified myths of our society keeps repeating, I can't stay silent about the sheer hypocrisy I see from many Western liberals. How can you defend a movement that executes its own people by shooting them in the street without trial for merely disagreeing or being labeled collaborators? How can you call that resistance while those very scenes mirror the barbarism you'd condemn anywhere else in the world? You claim to stand for liberal values, for human rights, for justice, but your empathy collapses when the victims are Palestinians murdered by other Palestinians, when it doesn't fit into the neat narrative of oppressor and oppressed. What does that say about your values, really? If you can't overlook if you can overlook the public executions and rule by terror just because the perpetrators shout liberation, then maybe your solidarity isn't rooted in morality, but in ideology. And that's what it is. It's all based on ideological hatred of the Jews. If the Jews aren't involved in these things, as far as these particular groups are concerned that protest about these things, then there's no crime taking place, right? This savagery, this barbarity, it's all justifies because they're collaborators and they're the enemies. But if the IDF were ever to do this and film themselves doing this in a public execution of Palestinians, well, they would be like, oh my God, it's like the end of the world, war crimes, this is put Netanyahu in jail, blah, 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 blah. But as soon as Hamas do it, it's like, oh, well, they're Israeli collaborators. That's why we kill them without trial. That's like totally normal what we do. That's completely fine. We'll kill more of them. All right. How do you know all these people are guilty of what they're being, what's been said that they did? We don't know that. There's really been no trial around that. It's just public executions. And worse than all of that is the people that are apparently being genocided and, hiding and, no electricity, no power, nothing, just hiding out, are in the background cheering. They're in the background cheering. So, yeah, we are not all Palestinians. These people are not like us. They're savages, Hamas. And this is the difference. That's the difference. And you might not like me saying that, but it's true. That's the difference. If you somehow justifying this as being normal, it's not. All right, guys, let's move on to the next story. Actually, should I get to some of your comments? I should get some of your comments. Let's have a look. And then I'll move to the next story because I think it'll be easier to do it that way. Miss Antom says, Hamas started it and is now crying. Typical Marxist. I mean, there is a bit of Marxist communist type thing going on. That's why a lot of the left doesn't see anything wrong with this. So if you've seen like what happened in China, for instance, with Mao, what did they do? They went around executing everyone that they called collaborators or for having a different view. It happens in all of these kind of communist revolutions. They just go around and murder everyone that they see as an obstacle to their particular ideological worldview. And that's what's happening there. And that's why a lot of the left are like, yeah, well, that's fine. That's kind of what you got to do, right? And that's what they would do in Australia, for instance. If this ever came to something like this, they would go around killing everyone they didn't agree with. And they'd be like, well, they're collaborators, they're the enemy, and we just kill them without trial because, that's just kind of what we do. And it's all fine. It's not a war crime. It's different. It's different because they're collaborators. They're traitors. So it's just crazy. All right, let's have a few more of your comments and we'll keep going. What do they learn at school? Look, I think it's a good thing that those 29,000 students, especially during that time, were able to complete school as it's being claimed now. How many Jews celebrated their graduation during their genocide? Interesting point. Economics says, I have never claimed there was a genocide, but the starvation and malnutrition is undeniable. I think, look, there is definitely, I'm not denying that people were short of food, because it is a war zone. It is, at the end of the day, it's a war zone. And, there's going to be difficulties with access to food. Now, what Hamas are saying today, this is what they're saying today. They're saying that these people were executed because during that time, they were the ones that were stealing the aid trucks, right? They were the one that were stopping the aid. That's some of the allegations that have been made, that these gangs were the ones that were stopping Palestinians from getting food, and that's why. So this whole attribution of blame to Israel that was happening. Again, you're fighting your enemy. What's the expectation that you have to supply them with aid to help the siege go on longer? Like if you're doing siege warfare, why would you supply the enemy? Yes, I understand the whole matter of civilians and looking after them, but the standards are very different. It's not happening. Russia's not sending food supplies to Ukraine, and Ukraine's not sending food supplies to Russia. The responsibility falls onto the armies, the militaries, in this case, the terrorist group that have decided to take on Israel and the United States of America and so on. So it just doesn't add up. And when you see straight after the ceasefire, when everyone comes back out, these are not the scenes of starvation and malnutrition. Like, you see that. I've seen poverty in Africa, in Asia, malnourished, starving children and families, and it doesn't look like this. It's not the same thing. Yes, there were probably limits to the access to the things that they could have, but it's not the same as saying that they were purposely mass starved and malnourished. And even putting that onto Israel, like, really? Like, that's not how war works. And Smiley says that they were killed for helping the IDF soldiers. That may be the case. And I'm not saying that a country cannot, shoot its people that commit crimes, and maybe it's a crime. But the argument is that this is a war crime, that this is a part of this kind of murderous rampage that the IDF would do. But they're doing the exact same thing without any due process. There's no due process given whatsoever. So at the same time, we have thousands of prisoners who have been held in Israeli jails for some 10, 20 years coming back to Gaza. They weren't executed like this on the street. What would you say if those Gazans that were taken, a lot of them terrorists who have committed crimes like blowing up buses and things, and were executed on the street like this? That didn't happen. They were kept in jails. They were kept in prisons. Now, you might not agree with that particular sentence, but there is a bit of a process going on there, right? Even if it's not complete due process that you say that you want. And at the same time, there's absolutely no due process here with this savagery, and people are justifying it. You're trying to justify it by saying these are enemies that help the Israelis, so therefore we can just savagely execute them. While the public films and cheers. It tells you a lot about the society. No, I'm not going to show the shooting because it's not allowed on these platforms. But yeah, you can go watch it on X. It's available. There's plenty of that footage on X. Let's go to the next topic, guys. I'll keep going, and I'll come back to some of your questions as well. This one is from the Australian. So back to some Victorian news, right? And I think slowly the news cycle is changing a little bit as well with the ceasefire. So Premier blasts parent gender policy concerns. Jacinta Allen has used a feisty press conference exchange to accuse those who question her government's policy on gender distressed children of being reckless and irresponsible. So I'll read the article first, then we'll watch the video. The Australian revealed on Monday that it is Victorian Education Department policy for teachers and other school staff to use the concept of a mature minor consent to enable children to socially transition in instances where their parents are deemed unsupportive. So pretty much the state taking the place of the parent. Not only are there no guidelines in the department policy regarding what constitutes an unsupportive parent, there is no requirement for staff to document or account for this life-altering decision, nor for them to consult medical practitioners. So basically, school teachers, replacing parents and helping children transition. That's what's happening in Victoria. Teachers are also advised they must not tell parents about a child's desire to change their gender without the permission of the child. Melbourne psychiatrist Dr. Alison Clayton told The Australian that social transition is often the first intervention on gender-affirming treatment pathway, leading to puberty blockers, hormones, and surgery with significant associated harms, for example, to sexual and reproductive function. Dr. Clayton said there is no international evidential or clinical consensus that social transition improves mental health, and that studies from the Royal Children's Hospital have not found any association between social transition and improved mental health outcomes. University of Queensland Emeritus Professor Law Patrick Parkinson described the policy as grossly unethical, warning that schools are not qualified at all to make such decisions and that future negligence suits are likely from children harmed by secret transitions. Asked whether she was comfortable with Victorian children being enabled to socially transition at school without their parents' knowledge or consent and without any safeguards in place to ensure that the child and responsible teacher are aware of the consequences and serious risks that the decision involves, the Premier asked whether the Australian was giving an example or providing a proposition. Let's have a look at the exchange. I'll bring the video up. Because, again, we already know this kind of thing's happening in Victoria. And it's being called out more, thankfully, by the media as well, by the Australian at least. And the government don't seem to have legitimate answers for it. So they will, take the questioning down one particular line. And let's just have a listen to that.
The transgender kids, because we know that transgender kids are 15 times more likely to commit suicide. So I would hope, Rachel, well, you're going to dispute the higher rates of suicide amongst transgender kids.
From the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, who say that there are no credible statistics on that they don't have the data to verify that.
Rachel, I'm not going to engage with you in a debate about the different levels of the rate of suicide amongst transgender kids. I am just not. That is just so deeply irresponsible, and because the data that I have says that transgender kids are. Rachel, I will answer your questions if you give me the opportunity to complete the question that you have asked before you interject with another one. So can we behave, if we can have this responsible discussion, that would be the most appropriate way, and then we can finish up this press conference.
Yeah, so that's kind of the response, right? I mean, we've seen it. This is not the first time we've seen this. Whenever you kind of, any journalist brings up this topic with the Premier, because usually that's the only type of people that get to ask her these questions. They always divert to the suicide numbers, and it's almost like you can't talk about this, right? So if parents in Victoria are concerned about it, and there could be an overwhelming number of parents in Victoria that are concerned about the fact that teachers now are playing the role of parent and helping their children secretly transition and putting them into the pathway of what we read in that article, getting puberty blockers, doing all these things. But yeah, they'd be concerned about it, and they want to challenge that. But what happens, even if you challenge that, the media challenges that in a public setting, it's like, oh, we can't talk about it. You're harming people pretty much. It's literally the suicide argument is saying that it's a no-go area. Don't question anything because you're putting people's lives at risk. So therefore, everything we say everything our particular experts say has to be the way that this is done. And we've seen in the UK and other countries where, you know, this has done a lot of damage to children. They're trying to reverse a lot of this. And for whatever reason, Victoria is hell-bent, and some other states in Australia are hell-bent on destroying the relationship between parents and children. I would say indoctrinating children as well. Some of these teachers that we're getting and pushing children down this pathway, and it's sick. And a lot of this is irreversible. And like the professor was saying in the article, you know, there would be legal consequences, I believe, in the future of how these things are being done at the moment, because I don't know if there's if there's no guidelines, if there's no transparency, if there's no, like proper professional steps being taken at that level, and children are making these irreversible decisions about their autonomy, like their body. I would say there'd be definitely serious lawsuits in the future. And I hope there are. I hope the government, and unfortunately it'll be the taxpayer that has to pay for all this, but they're taken to the cleaners, because it's sick what they're doing. It's a great comment from Crunchy. It's another step to divide the family. Definitely. I mean, the family unit is so important. And, you know, having government tell you that the parent no longer is the person that decides the future of their child, like, you know, and is some random, you know, left-wing university fed, indoctrinated teacher that probably, has some crazy views, are the ones who are now the parent because, you know, the government's allowed that, is crazy. And it's dangerous. Definitely dangerous. Hippie, another good point. They won't lower the age for tattoos. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that kids cannot do until they're 18, for instance. But for whatever reason, all right, you can't get a tattoo at a certain age. You can't, drive or drink and all these things. But if you want to like chop off bits of your body, then yeah, the government will facilitate some random teacher talking to your child without you knowing, for them to start that process. And then they will help your child socially transition and then lead them to the pathway of getting, things like puberty blockers and so on. Like, it's freaking weird. It's weird. DMAC, I agree. It's child abuse. Charcoal says, this is another, Israel pay you 7K yet, mate. Mate, I think you got to move on from that, man. All right, let's, I think I had another article related to this, because what we've seen as well is there is a bit of pushback happening, at least in the Northern Territory. And this is around the issue we had in Victoria as well, where we had that trans woman, that male that transitioned into a woman. And then the same individual had also, when they were a man, incestually, I think, raped or sexually assaulted their daughter, like their young daughter, like 4 or 5 years old. I can't remember the exact details. I covered this last week. And then they ended up in the women's prison because, like, they're a woman now. So they're in the women's prison, and people rightly raised concerns about it because, right, you had this kind of pedophile dude that did sick, perverted things to his own daughter that is now transitioned and wanting to be with the women, right? This is about women's safety. And a lot of women don't like that. Like, the erasure of women is a real thing. Like, the invasion of women's spaces, right, is a real thing. But there is a woman in the Northern Territory as well, the Chief Minister, I believe, who has said that there will be no transgender women in female prisons. And that's obviously raised some eyebrows amongst the left. So we'll read this article from the ABC, and I'll share some of my thoughts on this. So LGBTQIA plus groups horrified by NT leaders' comments about not detaining transgender women in female prisons. The Northern Territory government has doubled down on its stance against detaining transgender women in female prisons, as a local LGBTQIA plus group says is horrified by the comments. Speaking on Darwin radio station Mix 104.9 this week, NT Chief Minister Leah Finocchiario said female prisoners should have women only, and that female prisons should have women only, and that the Country Liberal Party, CLP, had taken a practical common sense approach to the debate. At the end of the day, if you're born a bloke, you're gonna go to a men's prison, and we'll deal with you there. Yeah, I mean, it's so simple. She put it so simply. At the end of the day, if you're born a bloke, you're going to go to the men's prison, and we'll deal with you there. I would think by the time that you end up, you know, like a pedophile dude molesting his own bloody children, like you've lost rights to everything, right? You're going straight to the male's prison. Your, you know, delusions and other things that you might be wanting to do and whatever. No, you're going straight to the male's prison, right? That's kind of what prison is. The Chief Minister clarified the anti-prisoners who were assigned male at birth and now identified as female would be sent to men's prisons even if they had transitioned. Currently, that is the rule, and that rule will continue, she said. In a statement responding to questions from the ABC on Tuesday, Miss Finocchiaro, I'm pretty bad with names, reaffirmed her stance on gender diverse inmates and said the CLP had revised the previous Labor government's woke transgender prisoner policy where self-determination was enough. Good on her. This has resulted in 0 men being placed in women's prisons, and that will continue under my watch. In documents obtained by the ABC under the previous Anti-Corrections Department policy, gender diverse inmates were housed in separate accommodations where possible, or if capacity allowed with gender they self-identified as. The CLP had updated the policy to include a proper clarification process in October 2024, but the government would not provide further details or a copy of the updated documents. The Chief Minister's comments come after conservative think tank Women's Forum Australia penned a letter to the Prime Minister and state and territory leaders over the weekend urging government action. The letter said transgender women in female prisons presented a safety risk for inmates assigned female at birth and called for a ban in Australia of the states, ban in all Australian states and territories. That's Rachel Wong. So we had her on the show about a week and a half ago where we discussed this issue. Women's Forum Australia Chief Executive Rachel Wong said the CLP's decisive action was a sign the Northern Territory was leading the nation with moral clarity and common sense. So the the left has said that advocacy groups for the sister girl, brother boy, and LGBTIQA plus community, did that just change? What's this one? So we started with, I'm just making sure that, okay, so we started here, LGBTQIA plus. I think ABC has actually, they might have misidentified this whole group. I think that's kind of offensive, right? So we got LGBTQIA plus, and when we come to the article, there's been an upgrade, and we're up to the LGBTIQA plus, TIQA plus. I'm pretty sure that's different, isn't it? Yeah. P. What's the P? Anyway, Community Vital Collective said it was horrified by Miss Finocchiaro's comments and claimed she had mislabeled transgender women as men. The Chief Minister, I'm just reading the comments. The Chief Minister implies the sister girl and transgender women are somehow inherently more violent. A spokesperson for the group said in a statement, I mean, they'll be inherently, I believe, personally, like, I agree with the Chief Minister's decision. Like, women, it's a women's space. Like, the women should feel safe in a women's prison. Like, it's a women's only prison. It's a women's space. Anyway, I'm going to read more of this nonsense. Let's have a listen to the Chief Minister. If you want to read that article, guys, it's on the ABC, but I just can't read it. Especially because they misidentified the group. I feel offended for them. Oh no, I can't find the Chief Minister. That's all right. All right, guys. I think I was going to do one more story. Actually, maybe I will. I'll just do that story. Let's give me a second. And then we'll get to your comments. This is more so a feel-good story to end with. I thought maybe we'll try to do the last story at least as a positive story. And I know there's negative things related to the story. Obviously, it's the tragic death of Charlie Kirk. But at the same time, his life was honored today at the White House with the Medal of Freedom, as well as a recognition of Charlie Kirk, I think via a proclamation to have a national day of mourning or a celebration, if it were. on this particular day, and it also coincides with his 32nd birthday. So such a young individual that's had a profound impact now through his advocacy, his work, and obviously his political work on behalf of conservatives and the right. So it's been recognized by the White House, who writes here, Charlie Kirk was assassinated in the prime of his life for speaking the truth, living in his faith, and relentlessly fighting for America. That's why today President Trump posthumously awarded Charlie Kirk, our nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. There you go there, Erica Kirk with President Trump. And actually, it was a very special Medal of Freedom because it had a cross engraved into it. And I think it's the first time they've had a Christian cross engraved onto the Medal of Freedom. At least that's what Benny Johnson was saying. For the first time in American history, a Christian cross has been engraved into the Presidential Medal of Freedom in honor of Charlie Kirk. Erica Kirk wanted to share this with you as a testament of Charlie's powerful work advancing the kingdom of Jesus Christ. So very custom made just for Charlie there by the White House. And this is unforgettable Oval Office moment. President Trump welcomes Erica Kirk and signs a historic proclamation declaring today, October 14th, his own birthday, so Charlie Kirk's birthday, as National Day of Remembrance for the legendary Charlie Kirk. So yeah, somewhat of a feel-good story because a lot's happened in that time, but the recognition and I guess the legacy of Charlie Kirk continues on. So I think that's a great thing. Miss Anthons, you're correct. Yeah, it's Catholic, not Christian. Maybe. Are you talking about the cross? Are you the particular thing that was engraved onto the cross? All right, guys, let's get to some of your comments, and we'll finish up the show from that point onwards. All right, Anthony has made his way into the super chat. I was wondering where you were, Anthony, because I was thinking, am I really going to finish the show without having this as a super chat comment, which is Trump's fault? Anthony's been doing this, I think, for weeks, if not months now. So thanks, mate. Thanks for jumping in with what I wanted to see, which is blaming Donald Trump for everything in the world, which is what leftists do. Cool, guys. So yeah, I'm going to spend the next 10-15 minutes, guys, just answering any questions you have or talking about anything you want to talk about in the comments. So throw them my way. While you're doing that, I'll go through some of the previous comments and bring some of them up and maybe answer any questions that are there. I don't think this is accurate, but going back to the ABC in the 1970s, P means pederast. Really? I would hope not. Yeah, I would hope not. Yeah, I talked about this story, Mr. Jane. Like last week, the Sex Discrimination Commissioner doesn't even know what a woman is. This is the world we live in. Yeah, and they also refuse to acknowledge what a biological male is, for instance. Like that was just a crazy Senate hearing. And that's still I've seen that going viral like around the world because obviously we just look ridiculous. We look ridiculous. DMAX says, it actually broke my heart when Charlie was murdered. Yeah, it's tragic. I mean, it's hard to describe, really. Rest in peace, Charlie. A cynic says, Jesus' kingdom is in heaven, not on Earth. What else do we have here? Thanks, mate, for your contribution. Liberty Prime says Charlie had the ear of the kids at school and unis, and that's the left wanted to indoctrinate. That's why they killed him. Yes, I still, obviously we see these kind of online investigations which were happening in Canada, so on and so on, comes to mind. It still does appear to be that trans, well, that dude or whatever that had a trans boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever, I don't know what it is, and had these kind of particular left-wing views. I'm interested in seeing how that all plays out with that trial and what comes out of that once the investigations are all done. Brittany, thanks for the super chat. Thank you for joining for another show. I appreciate the support for the show. Rukshan, you need to get on a Hamas leader's son, which Erin Molan got on her show. I know exactly who you're talking about. He is a very fiery animated character, and he's done a lot of interviews, and he does a lot of social media. He's gotten around, and he's spoken a lot from the perspective of being someone that's come from that background. Like you say, he is one of the founding leaders' sons, and he was on the Erin Molan show. Yeah, we might be able to get him on to an episode of the Opposition Podcast. That could be quite interesting. Odin Bale says, thoughts on trading while insolvent laws in Australia? Should we punish directors willing to work through problems? Yeah, that's a big topic. I probably can't cover that today. Are you saying that we shouldn't, like, people should, should we punish directors willing to work through problems? Okay, I see what you're saying. So you're saying that even though they've gone insolvent, they're trying to make, things better. So should we punish them for trying to make things better? Yeah. There's a lot of leeway given to certain businesses and industries, right? And I don't know exactly what you're specifying, if there's a particular industry you're talking about, but I know there's a lot of industries which are subsidized or protected by governments from falling apart. The banking industry comes to mind as being one of those industries. And yeah, sometimes businesses have it tough, and it's not through any doing of their own that they end up in those situations. So should we punish them for trying to either rescue their business or rescue themselves or whatever? Yeah, it's a big question. There's a lot of things attached to it. It depends on if their practices or their businesses harmed other individuals as well. For instance, we've seen when the building industry collapses, just how much harm that does to people who are trying to build a home. So I think all those things need to be weighed up and considered. Definitely, there needs to be a balance between consumer protection laws and allowing businesses which are also being suffocated by government policy to survive when things get really tough, because it does get really tough for businesses in Australia, especially small businesses, and they're the ones that suffer the most, really, the impacts of government policy when things all go wrong. Hey, Rukshan, bring up Jacinta's new petrol spy clone paid for with taxpayer dollars. Yeah, I'll do that. I saw that today and I was like, I'll talk about that next time, because this is the petrol pricing app, right? And I think the difference is because there's already apps like this. I think all the 7-Eleven and stuff have an app, but I think there's some funny videos. We'll watch the videos, right? DML, we'll watch the videos. Let's just read the articles from Jacinta Allen. Her tweet, sorry. We're helping Victorians get the best deal before they fill up. With Servo Saver in the Services Victoria app, you'll be able to see prices in real time. We're also capping daily price increases at once a day, and will make it mandatory for fuel providers to report their prices, meaning no surprises at the pump. It's all part of our fair fuel plan to give Victorian drivers more money back in their pocket and save hundreds of dollars a year. Kind of sounds good on paper. Let's just see how it all plays out. Let's have a listen to Jacinta.
dollars on petrol at the service station. You want to hear about how you can save hundreds of dollars on petrol at the service station every year? Well, the Servo Saver starts today on the Services Vic app. It's a simple map. It shows you the cost of petrol at service stations right across Victoria, helping you to work out the best deal and put more money back into your pocket. But this is just the first step. We're changing the law to cap fuel price increases with new legislation that we're introducing into the Parliament today. This is all focused on providing you with real help with cost of living right now. Do you want to hear about how you can...
It kind of sounds good, but I just don't trust government. And usually what happens is these companies will also find a way around this, right? I don't want to be someone that just slags on kind of every government policy or thing that they try. Anything that's saving people money or helping cut down the cost of living is welcomed, but a lot of these problems, of course, are created by the same government. And there's always this, I feel like, especially with Jacinta Allen and the Labor government in Victoria, I always feel like they're trying to hoodwink people. We saw that with the whole announcement around Transurban. They were saying like, oh, she put out this whole letter to Transurban saying, hey, we made public transport free on the weekends to celebrate the opening of the tunnels, whatever, the metro tunnels. And why don't you guys make it free on the weekend, right? She put out this big letter, like she's kind of, bullying the big corporations to comply. And it turned out that Transurban had already agreed to do this with the government already, and they were definitely planning to make some of the tolls on their tollways free. I think for a couple of months up until February, or like during the holidays or whatever. So, I don't know what scam is being pulled here. We'll have to wait a couple of days and just see how, the dots and I's on the paperwork to see what they've done to get this to work. Because calls him Mossad Yusuf. This is the son of Hamas. It's not. It's a similar name, but it's not Mossad Yusuf. But that's the claim. Like Palestinians and Gazans or whatever will be like, oh well, he's been indoctrinated by the IDF. Molly North says, hey, Rukshan, maybe next time talk on how local councils are exceeding more than they were ever supposed to do. The laws that they are enforcing are getting out of hand, plus the rates. Yes, definitely. I live in the city of Melbourne. That's my council. And they're involved in all types of nonsense that has nothing to do with running the city of Melbourne. But it's not just them. The city of Yarra is notorious. We all know about the city of Yarra. They get involved in like nuclear treaties and just crap that has nothing to do with the councils. It's something I've talked about a lot in the past, and usually it's because when they change the rates or they put up some new law, or they, what were they doing? A couple of that absolutely achieved nothing. A couple of years ago, they were putting up sanctions or whatever against Israel, right? In the councils, like, come on, it's just like, what? Ross says there has to be one question where you say yes or no. Crunchy says, what will have the effect in Australia with China block rare earth metals? I think you're talking about the BHP thing. I haven't looked too much into it, but obviously, China is throwing around their weight, not just when it comes to Australia, but around the world. And yes, I think it's a problem that we have this massive dependency on countries like China. So yeah, if they shut out, these major Australian companies from the Chinese market, for instance, it would definitely have a flow-on effect in Australia and the plans that we have. So exactly how that all plays out, I don't know all the details. I haven't been following it too closely, to be honest, mate. This is a good one as well, Catherine. Do you feel the Qantas frequent flyer data breach as a scare tactic might have already backfired? Yeah, I saw that, like the massive data breaches. Even I was hearing the Prime Minister's phone number and maybe Susan Lay's phone number is on there. So I mean, it is a big data breach. When you say it might have already backfired, do you mean in terms of people being worried about government services like digital IDs and things like this? Because it's not very secure, right? Every couple of years, we see these companies that we entrust our information to. I think it was Optus a few years ago as well, that ends up having all the data leaked, right? Somehow they're hacked. It all ends up on some platform where people are selling it on the dark web to the highest bidder. And yeah, some of us manage to, obviously, who are more kind of in tune with tech and things, and we've secured our accounts and we've got like 2-factor authentication and these kind of passwords which are a bit harder to crack. But a lot of people get caught up in all of this, and some people don't understand the consequences of it. So definitely it's a bad thing when data is leaked. And yes, it does kind of raise very serious questions about centralizing everything in digital databases, even if the government is involved, because nothing is 100% secure. Once it's digitized on some sort of server somewhere, there's every possibility, whether it's a rogue employee, whether it's a foreign nation, for very clandestine type reasons, they're doing these things and they come across some data and they leak it and other people try to sell it. As soon as everything's digitized and centralized, there's a possibility that we will be giving up our information to others very easily. Good point, DML. Capping price increases means they just won't drop prices in the first place. And that's the thing. Like, I just feel like these companies are not stupid, right? These businesses, they make profits for a reason. And if you're saying that there's going to be a cap and you can only do one increase per day, then wouldn't the way that these companies think, especially even as a whole collective, right? Because all these people work together, they conspire together. Wouldn't it be just to set the highest price, like you said? Like, would it lead to less price fluctuation where we could even end up with even cheaper prices? So let's say they've capped the price, or, they've changed the price, whatever, the one price change they get a day. And then, like, would there have been a possibility, like, later on in that night, the prices may have dropped even more and we're now missing out on that particular discount because of whatever? Like, I'm just spitballing here. Like, there are those, considerations that we must consider for sure. Yeah, this is a good point, Brittany. Like, we'll be paying one way or another, we'll be paying more. This is this whole kind of magic thing where the government in Victoria is like, hey, we're trying to find ways to save you money for the cost of living, but at the same time, like, we see things like, this new treaty thing that the government's talking about will cost Victorians, I believe it was $80 million or something like that per year. So, like, where's that coming from? The taxpayer, right? So, like, come on, it's just we're just being hoodwinked. Omar says, Ruski, imagine having more than 200k followers and only 20 people watching. Tells you how you've dropped out dramatically, bro. I'm just doing this, man. It's late at night. You might be looking at numbers. I'm streaming to multiple platforms, so it's not. You might just be watching on Facebook. Facebook actually don't distribute live streams like they used to. They actually decentivize people doing live streams. But yeah, it is what it is. Depending on what I'm streaming, if I'm streaming a protest or something more interesting, maybe people join in at different times of the day. But this is around 11 at night, and it's not about that. So, yeah. I mean, you can say whatever you want, but there's people here. I'm having fun. They're having a conversation. And we keep building. Tika, how you doing, mate? Thanks for joining in another show. You got messages from MyGov telling me I attempted to log in a heap of times. Legit messages. I haven't opened it in years. Yeah, there's a lot of issues with MyGov and people getting access to emails and phone numbers and trying to log in because these scammers have figured out that they can scam people out of potentially their tax refund and so on. So that's why you see a lot of that. Yeah, 11 p.m. stream. This is when the hardcore Rukshan fans tune in. 100%, man. This is when we have the hardcore Rookwits joining up and just having a chat, enjoying life. Ray and Omar and Ray, even though they complain about who's watching the show, they always tune in. Ray, thank you for joining in. Yeah, I think a while back he was a little neutral, but now he has turned into a right-wing nut job. Like, it's not hard to notice. Guys, I am a hardcore conservative. I am very much on the right when it comes to my political views. I am a massive supporter of Donald J. Trump. I have been pretty much all my life, especially since 2016, more so. Not hiding those views. Like, I don't mind. During COVID, it wasn't really about politics. We were all in it. I was filming what was happening and I just showed the things that were happening. But today I'm happy to have particular views. I'm not going to have a neutral view on a terrorist organization. I don't support terrorists. So there's that, for instance. And I'm happy to have, different views on political topics. People want to hear my views. I can't be neutral when I'm doing a talk show like this. If I just came on and said, hey, so this is this and this is that, I might as just be a glorified newsreader. I'm giving people my views and my opinions. And it's not for everyone to agree with. Like, I don't want to be popular with everyone and everyone to like everything loved by everyone. During COVID, plenty of people didn't like what I was saying and a lot of people didn't agree with me. But yeah, I am very much on the conservative side, right wing. I wouldn't say I'm far right, as people claim sometimes, or an extremist and things like this, or a nut job. I think I'm pretty balanced in my views. For instance, I don't support Hamas because they're terrorists, and I'm from the West, and I'm a Westerner, and we don't support terrorism and Islamic terrorism and Islamic extremists and so on. It's pretty simple. Like, I'm very clear and clear cut about the reasons why I have certain views. There's no mystery. Crunchy says, what is Avi doing right now? I bet he is sleeping. Well, he's in Tel Aviv. I believe Tommy Robinson is on the way as well to Israel, so there'll be a few more live streams probably coming from Israel. I'm not exactly sure what's happening on that front. Gloria says, we're spot on. You're definitely more center right. Yeah, I'd say I'm kind of center right. Obviously I vehemently disagree with the left on a lot of things, but those disagreements don't go to the extent of them not being allowed to have those opinions. Like, I disagree with their ideas and I call them out on it, but I don't mind there being a left. I like the fact that there's different political groups in Australia, whether it's the left, the far left, the center, the center right, and so on, because that's, at the end of the day, it's that back and forth between all these groups that you end up with a balance sometimes, right? Sometimes you need that back and forth between different groups because, sometimes certain ideas on any political side is a bit extreme. So people bring it back. If you can bring things back to the center and find a good medium ground, it usually works out. That's what they were calling me, mate. The brown face of white supremacy. They were saying I was a leader of the white supremacist movement at one stage during the COVID times. Like, I cared. Like, it's just complete nonsense. Ascenic, you said the West doesn't support terrorists, the West creates terrorists. I agree with you to some extent. Yes, the Western powers have been heavily involved in those kind of things for sure. And they've been called out as well by people in the West. Just because our governments are involved in shady activities doesn't mean that we support those activities. Like, we're aspirational people in terms of our ideological views, and we hope and we wish that we don't go down those paths, but we have in the past, definitely. You can find those cases just in the Middle East. There's a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to the West, for sure. I'm not saying they're above reproach in terms of criticism. I'm happy to criticize the West. But having said that, there is a very big difference between Hamas, a group like Hamas, and the Australian government. Some of you might not agree with me. Some of you might say it's the exact same thing. but there is a difference. And that difference is a life that, as perfect as our lives are not, we still enjoy a standard of living, which is very high, thanks to Western liberal democracy, really. That's why we enjoy the standard of living that we do. And that's why many of the people that complain about the West, especially foreigners who have come to the West, that for some reason complain about these countries, still keep coming here, still want to leave everything else and come here. So there's something to that. But yeah, guys, look, thanks for joining in. I think we've taken it again today to 11 p.m., which is, I think, a bit better than last time we went till midnight. But that's because the Trump was speaking at the Knesset and we were playing that whole thing. So hope you guys had a good time. Yeah, good point. Watch out for Trump and Putin now. I think, yeah, if this particular conflict takes kind of backstage, the Ukraine conflict will become center stage for sure. I reckon Trump is waiting for Hamas to destroy themselves with infighting. I mean, look, that is also a tactic that has been employed many times to destabilize a nation. You let the infighting happen, kind of like a civil war happens. There's a bit of a clean out. It sounds all nefarious, but, yeah, there's not much. Like, if people don't want to live in peace and harmony, if they want to have a civil war, if they want to continue to live a certain way, especially somewhere like Gaza where you have all these people offering billions and billions of dollars of investment to fix the place, but you kind of want to live in a certain way because you want to destroy the state of Israel, and this is what you want to focus your time and energy on. Well, yeah, there's going to be natural consequences to all of that. Let's not kid ourselves. And it might, be a civil war that takes place in Gaza, and more people will die. But I assure you, if it's just a civil war happening in that nation, all the concerns you've seen from the pro-Palestinian groups, at least, will be non-existent. We've seen that time and time again. It's a good point, Tika. Anyone can have notifications set to on. So yeah, if you guys are watching me on YouTube, turn the notification bells on so you know that I come on live. I will be doing Monday nights and Wednesday nights at 9 p.m, the Rukshan On X show. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, obviously, we do the Opposition podcast. It's not happening till Avi gets back from Israel again, probably in a few weeks. Maybe I don't know the exact plan that he's doing there, but when he gets back, obviously we'll be back on the Opposition podcast. But yeah, from Monday to Thursday, guys, pretty much 9 o'clock on Mondays, 9 o'clock on Wednesdays, and 7 o'clock on Tuesdays, and 7 o'clock on Thursdays, I do live stream. And if you're not following me already, join up on X at The Real Rukshan, as well as on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook at The Real Rukshan. You know what? Facebook, I have to mention Facebook here because there's something going on Facebook. Zuckerberg is really bringing out the I can't log in. I haven't got it logged in. Let's see if I can log in. Facebook. Real Rukshan. Let's have a look. No, it just gives a bloody QR code. What? No, here it is. Oh, we're live. Look, it's like Inception. What do we have here? But yeah, the commentary on Facebook, like the discussions that people have, like, is much more happening than places on X, especially for Australian audiences. I found right now, for instance, I can't. Let me just try this again. No, it won't let me go without logging in, and I don't know the password details that easily. But yes, there's some things with thousands and thousands of comments and lots of interactions, and it's very interesting interactions as well. It's happening on Facebook because I think people have their names on Facebook, and it's like tied to their accounts. Usually, there's not many anonymous accounts like on X, so it's really interesting the way that people converse on Facebook. But you can also find me on X, guys. I'm on X a lot. Obviously, I do a lot more commentary on X that I don't post on other platforms. So, because I am doing a lot more, just reacting to different people's tweets, sharing our different people's tweets, Obviously, some of the footage that I can't play on these kind of platforms end up on X because it's a bit more available there. So definitely follow me on X if you're not doing that already. A lot of because I'm a right wing nut job, as someone said, I do post a lot of Trump, a lot of the White House. I do believe he is a peacemaker president, and I support Donald Trump. And I'm not ashamed to say that I support Donald Trump. I think he's a very consequential president, and we will all miss him when he's no longer there, because there will be no one like him for a long time. And this is another super chat from Ishan Chad. Who is the worst out of the work right if you had to pick? Andrew Tate, Myron Gaines, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, or Dan Bilzerian? Keep it up. Thanks for the super chat, mate. I think probably Tucker Carlson. I think Tucker Carlson is who I'm disappointed in the most, personally, at a personal level, because I'm a massive Tucker Carlson fan at one point. Like Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity on Fox News, I would religiously watch just for entertainment purposes, because Tucker was great on Fox News. I thought personally, like, just the way he kind of read the news out and laughed, and like all the mannerisms that he still has today, it was much more done in like a way that was palatable back then. But yeah, since kind of he's gone independent, and even at the start when he went independent with Tucker Carlson Network, he had a lot of support. Obviously, that's dropped off a lot. And again, people have different views, and certain issues can be polarizing, right? That's what happens. But I think the thing I'm disappointed in the most amongst all of these people is the way that they've underhandedly gone after Donald Trump. And he's someone that's I believe supported these individuals a lot. The existence of a lot of these individuals in the status that they are at today is thanks to Donald Trump. Not that he did something to do that for them, but just the way that Donald Trump carries himself in American politics has led to the rise of these type of commentators. And a lot of them are got the knives out, right? It's kind of like a Julius Caesar moment, right? All these commentators who are pretty much on his side are holding the knives at this particular time for whatever weird reason. Like, there's all these weird things going on. So I think probably Tucker. Andrew Tate, he's always been upfront about the kind of individual that he is, and I just look at him as entertainment. Myron Gaines, again, he's just someone that says outlandish things for attention, and he does pretty well out of that. But he's got a particular audience, and I think his audience have the same IQ that he has. Candace Owens, again, someone I would say that I would personally be disappointed in the sense that she's really gone after people that have supported her throughout the years. And obviously, this whole investigative thing, yeah, it's entertaining. It's not something that I agree with per se, in the sense of it's great to investigate things. It's great to have theories and views, but you have to be able to back it up, right? You have to be able to back it up with evidence, because it's so easy, it's so tempting to just say things and put things out there. But over time, you'd lose legitimacy if you can't back those things up. And I think there's been multiple instances now where she's not been able to do that. Or when she's been called out, she's blamed someone else, right? It's easy just to keep blaming people and bringing up conspiracies, right? And Dan Bilzerian is just basically just like an idiot, right? If you ask me, he's literally just an idiot who's just seen an opportunity. Because, he had his thing for a while, right? He was like the original kind of weird, replacement of, what's the guy from the Playboy Mansion? Hugh Humphrey. What's his name? I forgot. But yeah, he was kind of a Playboy type guy, and then obviously OnlyFans and all these things came along, and all these other crazy people came along, and he was no longer important. But now he's found his stick in saying outlandish, crazy things that no one else would say. But whenever he appears on a podcast and he's met by someone else who's a bit more intellectually, has a bit more intellectual clout to them, he struggles. And I think it's very telling that he doesn't really engage in proper political debate either. Cam, you agree with me on Tucker? Yeah, I mean, yeah, Tucker. I saw Tucker live in Australia. I was kind of not directly. I was in the vicinity of Tucker during those times, right? So it's someone I admired for sure. But that's just how it is. Sometimes those things happen. Candace is falling for false facts. I don't know if she's falling for it. She's very clever. She's very smart in what she's doing. She's kind of like an Alex Jones. Like Alex Jones has existed for a long time, talking about, sometimes he's right, but a lot of the time he's just talking about the same, like just crazy stuff, right? I'm not saying crazy in the sense that it's wrong, but it's just like crazy things, right? But he always talks about it. She's kind of going down that path, and that's fine. That's fine. But at certain points, people will, call her out and be like, well, show us have the results. And the results aren't showing text message threads and things like this and alluding to things. That's not the result. The result is the final proof, or the final, like the smoking gun type thing, right? And we don't get that very often. Is it Hugh Humphreys? Is it? It's not. It's Hugh Hefner. Hugh Hefner. I was thinking of Hugh Hefner. That's it. Brittany said there. So yeah, that Dan Brazilian or whatever, he kind of became like a Hugh Hefner type dude for a little bit, but now he's fallen off his rocker. Because yeah, like the world's crazy, right? Like the attention spans of people and the kind of content they're looking for, and the degeneracy that we see in the world, and the things that these OnlyFans models and stuff do. Like people are just upping the game each time. It's like you can't keep up. So everyone's trying to get people's attention, and they'll do things and say things that garner those views and attention. But not here, not the real Rukshan. I'm just the real Rukshan. I'm true to myself. And maybe that's why less people watch me. I don't know. But thanks, you guys. Thank you for watching. Was there a super chat? Oh, yep. Jeff, sorry, mate. Thanks for letting me know. I've heard you say before that Israel has more legitimacy as a state than Australia. Why is that exactly? Don't get me wrong. I love Israel, but why? I think I would mention that more so based on the fact that people in Australia, like Australians, for instance, I'm talking about Aussies, Australians, right? Let's just say, that complain about the state of Israel, saying that it's on stolen land and it's not legitimate. I just make the claim that it's the same argument that the far left here makes when they protest, that pro-Palestine protests. When they talk about Australia, they'll say Australia is a colonial project. It's a delegitimate colony. It needs to be deconstructed, right? It's going to be torn down because it's a genocidal state. That's the claim they make about Australia. And the reason that I say if you compare Israel and Australia, well, they're more legitimate in the extent of, at least with Israel, you can trace back those roots 2,000, 3,000 years. And we have historical record, historical evidence, even things like in the Bible itself. So we know that Jewish people have been on those lands, right? I'm not making claims about who owns the land. I'm saying Jewish people have been on that continent for 3,000 years. So their claim to that particular area is more legitimate than the claim that, if you compare it to the left-wing argument about Australia, that they make about Australia. Because Australia is 250 years, 300 years since like European discovery, federated in 1901 as a nation. So very young nation, right? Despite the miraculous things we've achieved in this country to get to the point we are today, it's a very young nation. So if you want to compare the two, of course, if you're just comparing it very accurately historically, Israel does have a greater claim to have a nation and a state on that particular land, if you prescribe to the left-wing narrative about, the indigenous were there first, so therefore they get to have a claim over the land. Australia is illegitimate because it's stolen land and it's genocidal people and so on. So that's kind of the point of view that I take. It's not to say that Australia is not a legitimate country. Like I believe in the legitimacy of Australia. I believe in the sovereignty of Australia. I believe that despite what these left-wing lunatics say, that Australia is a sovereign, legitimate nation that can't just be taken away because some people are crying about it. History, and it's the same thing when it comes to Israel. Yeah, you might not like the history, you might not like how it played out, but that's just how history is. And I bring this up all the time. It would be like me complaining about what happened to Constantinople and the Eastern Roman Empire, which, Constantinople is literally Istanbul. The Hagia Sophia was the biggest, like the most holiest Catholic site in the Eastern Roman Empire, which is today now a mosque. It's like me saying, well, legitimately that belongs to the Europeans. It belongs to the Romans. the kind of European people that were there at the time, return it back to the Catholics, right? It's like me saying this and crying about it, but I don't. I accept the history and what has happened in that part. And if you don't accept the history, then yes, fight for it, fight a war, win back your land. Now, this time again, certain people in that Middle East region don't like Israel being there and how it all came about after World War II. They don't like any of that. All right, fight for it, try. They've fought many times. They keep getting their asses kicked. They tried again recently with a terrorist attack. Again, now they've had their asses kicked again. That's just the truth of it. So if you can't win on the war battlefield, then what are you going to do? You're going to force the rest of the world to give you something like that? Try that, but that's not happening either. So either you make peace and you make do, or if you want to keep fighting things, then yeah, you're going to either win or lose, and that's just the consequences of it. Anyway, guys, I've rattled on. I hope I've answered your question. Greek Orthodox Church, not Catholic. It was a part of the Eastern Roman Empire, and it was Catholic. And you do have Greek Catholics. So when I went to Israel, there was a Greek Catholic church. Yes, at one point it did become Orthodox. A lot of these areas in that part, but the point still stands. These belong. If you want to talk about it, what belongs, like Constantinople is Constantinople. All right, we should bring it back. Right, but I don't spend my time crying about it because it's not going to happen. All right, guys. I hope you've had a good show. If you enjoyed everything, I'll see you all next time. Thanks, guys.